Greetings, class. I want to talk to you for a minute about the revision form for your narrative. This video was supposed to be uploaded last week. I sincerely apologize. My computer crashed, and not only that, it destroyed the video. It's corrupted apparently. So let's focus on revision now. Your topic choices, you have these three, and I know I have a fourth option for those of you who did not really like these three options, but if you chose these three, let's focus on them, and we can talk about this in the process that you will go through as you are creating your revision and preparing for your final draft. Okay, let's look here. It says, what are you making, what points are you making about the essay subject? Okay, is this point explicitly stated in the thesis statement? If so, where? Now, it depends on the topic as well as the type of thesis you have. If you have an implied thesis, the one without those 3 points, then your points are not explicitly stated. Okay, and what it means by this is you're going to let us know what you're talking about as each paragraph comes. You don't have those 3 points that you typically have, whereas when you're regular thesis, your points are stated in each paragraph along with being stated in your thesis. So if you wrote about your obituary and being a mother, then you have that in your thesis, being a professor, and then your role in the community. So those will be your 3 points, and your paragraphs will align with that. However, if it's implied, we only get that information when it comes to your paragraphs. Okay, it's not stated in your thesis. So think about that. Decide which type of thesis you have, and explain if it's stated and why not, and your thought of creating a thesis that was implied or not implied, and think about those things. The next point, it says list some details that enrich your narrative. Okay, if this is the case and you're thinking about your narrative, then here are some type of details I want you to think about. Okay, and I want you to pull these out and list these out for your examples. Okay, of course there are tons of different types of details, but here are the main ones that I want or I feel like are necessary for a narrative. Okay, of course you have those visual ones where literally you can see it like a movie. Okay, you have those aerial sounds where it's focusing on sounds. An example is it the hiss of my professor's voice irritated me as I explained my answer. So if someone's saying, you can hear that in your mind. Okay, so if you put that sound in your paper, you hear that in your mind. Okay, olfactory, smell. Here's an example. The smell of the fall peaches gave me delight as I began to bite it. And so you can think about the smells. You can be more specific. You can say, the lavender scent or whatever scents or smells that you want to describe. You can do that. Tactiles, the touch. Okay, and an example is the hot ground scorched my feet as I ran to the other side of the road. And then gustatory is taste. You can describe that banana, that peach, whatever you're eating, if you include any of that. Okay, and then here's an example. The banana tasted tart and starchy as I look for more food to eat. Okay, so of course, I want you to think about those different details that you are placing. And since this is a narrative, the ones that are more sensory are the ones that I want you to think about and incorporate. Okay. All right. Section 3, it asks you, thus, to write a various sentence structure and avoid monotonous strings of similar sentences. Should any sentences be combined? If so, which ones? And then can you think of different openings for any sentences? So we have a couple of different types of sentences that you can consider as you are starting to write. You can consider simple, compound, complex, or compound complex. And remember, if you choose compound complex, I give bonus points for those. So take chances. Okay. Now let's remember a couple things about sentences. Your sentence needs a couple different things. You need capitalization, punctuation. You must have a subject, a verb, and it must make sense. Without any of these, you have something else. You may have a fragment, you may have a fused sentence, you may have a comma splice, etc. So make sure that it fits all of this. And I should definitely say proper punctuation. Now, I am is sitting here. I am is the most simplest sentence that you can create. I is the subject because you are a person, you are important. You are the focus here. Am is a verb. It's a be verb. It's not an action verb. Remember, there are different types of verbs that you can use. They're helping verbs, they're action verbs, and then these are the ones that help you with the state of being. Okay, am. But actually, how are you feeling? I am tired. They're showing how you are feeling, not necessarily the action that you are displaying. Okay, so this is a state of being. Now, let's focus on compound sentences. Compound sentences, by definition, are a combination of two simple sentences joined by a comma and a coordinate conjunction. Coordinate conjunctions are fanboys. For, and, nor, or, but, yet, or so. Okay? Now, a lot of times we use these different conjunctions because by definition they are conjunctions as well. And they combine things. But to make sure that we have a true compound sentence, you need to use these plus the comma and incorporate parts of a simple sentence. So let's look at my example here. I like chicken and pizza. Yes, you use and, but this is considered a simple sentence. This is not a compound sentence. It has a subject, it has a verb, and it makes sense. To make it a true compound sentence, what you would do is, I like chicken. That is a complete simple sentence. I like pizza. It's also a complete sentence, a simple sentence. So instead of having all these simple sentences of what you like, you can combine them by using a comma, and it must go right next to the word. I've noticed sometimes that people put a space between it. Do not do that, okay? And. That's how this works. You must have a simple sentence on one side and a simple sentence on the other side. And you join them by a coordinate conjunction plus the comma, with the comma next to the last word. Here's another example. Okay. I love pepperoni pizza, but I absolutely hate sausage pizza. That's also two simple sentences joined together by a comma and a coordinate conjunction. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, as you are creating these, you can try and use for. For is the same way you would use because. I know it seems a little weird and seems more of a classical or middle-aged English, but it works the same way. Now, our next type of sentence is a complex sentence. Complex sentences have two parts. They have an independent clause or sentence, and then they have a dependent clause, okay, which is also known as a fragment. So when you think of independent, that's a simple sentence, okay, or it is a compound sentence. But since it's just focused on complex, it needs to be a simple sentence. We'll talk about those compound complex in just a moment. Now, when you have that independent sentence, remember what I said those parts were. So you should immediately think about Webby. INDEPENDENT. Do you know what that mean, man? She got her own subject. She got her own verb. She got her own punctuation. And it makes sense, okay? So this is how you should think about that. It needs all of that. Now, once you have your independent clause, you need your dependent clause, which is a fragment. It's a fragment because it fails to make sense, or it fails to have a subject, or it fails to have a verb. That's what counts as a fragment. Those three parts of that sentence. If it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't have a subject, or it doesn't have a verb, it's a fragment. Okay? When it comes to punctuation, that's a whole different issue. Now, with complex sentences, they have conjunctions. Their conjunctions are called subordinate conjunctions. Here are some examples. Because, although, while, since, if, as, before, and after. Okay, those are the conjunctions. There are a ton more. You can go on YouTube and just put in subordinate conjunctions, and they have all these songs. They have examples if you go to Google, but these are the most common ones that my students tend to use. Now, as if complex sentences aren't complex enough, there are two ways we can write them. Okay, now we got to focus on the dependent and the independent to decide whether or not it needs a comma. So if your independent clause comes first, you do not need a comma. Okay, lately we've been talking a lot about running and sports, and so I chose this as an example. It says Sherry lost the race. That is an independent sentence. Okay, Sherry is the subject. What did Sherry do? She lost. Okay, and what did she lose? The race. So this makes complete sense, right? This is our independent clause. Now, the dependent clause starts with although. Although she ran really fast. If you were to take the independent clause off and start it as although she ran really fast, what happened? We don't know. So that fails to make sense. All right, and that's why that part is considered a fragment. And since your independent clause comes first, you do not need a comma because it flows together and it makes perfect sense. Okay, Sherry lost the race although she ran really fast. Now, if you choose to put your dependent clause first, you need a comma after the dependent clause, okay? But before the independent clause. And here's an example. Although she ran really fast, comma, which is the same sentence. We don't know what happened, which is why it's first it needed a comma, but we need to pause it. Sherry lost the race. This is what makes it clear, okay? And this is why it needs a comma. It's not complete, and so we need some understanding of what's missing from it. It's missing that makes sense part, right? Okay, the last type of sentence is complex sentence. This is a combination of a compound sentence and a complex sentence, okay? So both rules apply to this as you know the definition for compound and as you think about the definition for complex. So here is my example. Although she ran really fast, Sherry lost the race, which is our complex sentence. But she gained insight on how to become a better runner. That is our compound part. And of course, you can switch it back and forth. You could have said Sherry lost the race, ran really fast, comma, but she gained insight on how to become a better runner. So with this sentence, you can change it around. You can think about the different ways to create it. There is no right or wrong to flip your compound and complex. Complex can come first. Compound can come first. It's just really up to you. Okay.